Hello and welcome back to Shoogly Shed Motors. Today we're going to refurbish the CB250RS front brake caliper. So obviously this is pretty crusty and rusty. It is 44 years old now. So I'm going to basically strip this down, probably give it a blast in the cabinet, get it repainted and reassembled with new seals and things. I do have all the parts available to me here today, so hopefully this should be a quick enough turnaround. Also got this kind of crusty, horrible braided hose that I've got a replacement for. So yeah, it should be an easy enough job, just time consuming to strip it all down, get it blasted and painted and back together, but it needs done, so let's get stuck into it. Alright, first things first, let's get the hose off. What size are we? So 14. There we go. This caliper doesn't have a specific bleed port. The bleed port is built into the banjo bolt here, so I'm going to have to clean this up and reuse it, make sure that it's working properly. But aside from the fact it's a bit rusty, I think it should clean up okay. But apart from that, the hose is going in the bin. Okay, next we've got the cover for the brake pads, a little 8mm. Go. So it's the cover off, and now you can see the brake pads and the caliper, piston, sorry, in there. So we've got a little retainer metal wire thing here that we need to take out next. So this just pulls out a set of pliers like that. Don't lose that. So that hopefully means that these pins should be free enough to pull out now, but as with a lot of these things, they feel pretty solid. So luckily enough, there's two holes in the back of the caliper here that we can drift these out. So with the right side drift, they should hopefully go. That's one. Two. So these pins will definitely be needing cleaned up. That's them out. And with that, the pads should just fall out. Like that. So let's put the pads to one side. So the next thing I want to do is to take the caliper off the caliper carrier. We've got bolts here to do that with, like 14 to me. Yep. There we go. One, two. So if you notice the difference between these, one of them's got a groove in the middle, one of them doesn't. So remember which way round they go. So I think the one with the groove goes to the bottom of the caliper, and the one without it goes to the top. With those out, you can take the pad carrier off. Ugh, that is not a happy seal. I've also got a little hose carrier, clamp, guide, something here. Take that off, and then got replacements for all of these. So that's the pad carrier stripped. Next thing to do is to get the piston out. So we'll see how tight it is with a set of Swan necks. So we'll see if I can get this to move. Yeah. It appears this just comes apart. Handy. So, whoa, that is a seized piston. So, let's see if we can pop this out. We've got the banjo bolt hole here. So hopefully if I blast some compressed air into this, we might be able to get this to move. I'm also going to give it a wee squirt with some WD-40 just to help it on its way. Leave that for a couple of minutes. Let's see if we can get this to go. That's not going to go without a fight. What I'm going to try next is holding the piston in the vise and then working this back and forward and see if I can get this to free up. So I'm going to be careful just to clamp the outer edge of this so as not to damage the piston itself. She is tight. Okay, next plan is a bit of heat. So my aim here with applying heat is just to kind of heat it up and try and burn away some of the corrosion in there. And also try and melt the old seal, because the seal could be what's gripping to the piston. So I'm trying to heat it up and see if I can see bubbling coming through there. And that, in theory, should start to release the piston a little bit. I'm not trying to get the thing red hot, just giving it some gentle persuasion. Okay, we've got a bit of movement there. Let's see if we can get some penetrating fluid to work its way down inside there. Right. Unfortunately, I think that piston might have had its day. Yeah, there's no way that's going to work again. As you can see, the pitting is really bad. Usually I wouldn't worry about pitting at this end, but because that will go past the oil seal, that will almost certainly leak. Best laid plans often go awry, don't they? So I'm going to need to order up a new piston for this caliper. I suppose in the meantime we can get everything else cleaned up and painted. So much for trying to get it all done in a day. So funnily enough, after blasting this, I realised that there is actually a bleed nipple, but it has been sheared off and bunged up by the looks of it. So I'm probably not going to take the effort to try and remove that and restore that section, because the bleed nipple in the banjo bolt will clean up fine and serve the same function. I feel like if I try and do that, there's a good chance I'm going to make things worse, so I'm just not going to bother. Aside from that, they blasted up well enough. These just basically to key it, to take some paint. I find that elastic aluminium, till it goes that kind of dull pitted colour, is the best basically prep for the paint, and that little top bit as well. It's had a good blast. So I'm going to give all this a thorough degrease, mask off the bits I don't want to paint, and then give some coats of paint onto this. Right, a couple of days have passed and I've got a new piston in the post. Lovely stainless steel one this time, so hopefully that will never happen again. All my parts, actually quite fortunately, have had time to dry, so just remove all my bungs and masking. Okay, and the next thing I need are my new slider boots, my dust seal and my oil seal, and then we've got the slider pins all cleaned up, the pad retainer pins all cleaned up, the little pin retainer clip, and my bleed valve all cleaned up. I also have a new set of pads, pad backer, and some caliper mounting bolts. So hopefully now, fingers crossed, that's everything I need to reassemble this piston, this caliper, sorry. So yeah, it's just a case of putting it all back together again. So the grease I'm going to use is specific brake caliper slider grease. You can buy this, but if you've ever bought a replacement brake caliper for your car, a lot of the time it will come with a little sachet of this stuff. And it usually comes with more than enough than you need, so I usually have a few open sachets left over. And then spare sachets, I just put them on my sort of lubricants shelf, and then I can use it when I need it. if you remember, the one with the groove in it is going to the bottom of the caliper. And the one without the groove going to the top of the caliper. I didn't notice this at first until I cleaned these up, but handily this actually says upper on it. So that reminds you the correct position. Okay, so now that they're through, I'm just going to put a very small touch of copper grease on the threads, just in case they ever decide to try and seize on us. And then basically this just gets screwed onto it from here. There we go, nice and tight. So that's the caliper all back together, and just check that that pad carrier is free to slide back and forward along those slider pins, which it is. Now all that's left to do is to put the pads in place. So the pads are identical, but this one here, this little pad backer, was against the piston side. So I'm just going to put it back where it was. Set that in there. Set that in there. Now we've got these pins. So again, we touch a copper grease on these pins to stop them seizing. Through the hole in both pads and into the hole at the other side of the caliper, like that. So I'm just going to turn these pins so that the holes in them are facing up the way. And then we've got this retainer to go in. So the two kind of R-clips locate with the holes in the pins. A bit fiddly. And then it sits in its groove in the caliper itself. And lastly, this top piece that goes on like that. And I've got a little retainer bolt to go in with a little bit of copper grease on it as well. It's stainless steel. Spin that down. There we have it. A completely rebuilt brake caliper. And obviously the banjo bolt will go on when I put it on the bike. All right, that's the brake restored. Looking pretty good on there, nice and shiny. All new hardware, and obviously that paint makes a big difference to the crusty, flaky caliper that we started out with. So yeah, that's another big job ticked off. All I've got to do is bleed it up, but that won't take long. Next episode, I'm probably going to be tackling the carburetor. I have 3 carburetors to choose from, or to at least make one decent one out of them. So I've ordered a carb rebuild kit and I'm waiting on that arriving. But when that does, I'll get onto that. So hopefully it won't be too long before we get this bike running. A little bit of wiring to do before we can do that as well. But yeah, the list of jobs is getting ever smaller. So it's exciting. So as usual, please do give me a like, leave me a comment, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Leaving comments on that note is super important for my engagement. Again, YouTube is a bit of a funny one when it comes to its algorithms, but commenting on the video as well as liking it and things like that does a lot for, you know, promoting the channel and for, you know, helping YouTube recognize that the channel is growing. It's really tricky. I've noticed quite a big drop off in the growth of the channel. We kind of hit 5,000 subscribers and it's been a bit of a slog since then. So yeah, any support you can give me, commenting, liking, sharing, all these things make a huge difference. So I would really, really appreciate that if you have the time. See you next time. Take care. Goodbye. Not really what I wanted.